Okay, so usually when we sit down for one of these deep dives, I've got, a stack of articles, maybe a book,
Published stuff.
published stuff, peer-reviewed papers, standard vetted material.
Hmm.
But today feels different. I feel like I'm holding a prop from some sci-fi movie.
It has a certain weight to it.
It really does. I have this documented stamped confidential investment memorandum dated just a few days ago, February 2026. It's for a company called MicroCosmic International. And honestly, if even 10% of what's in here is true, we are not just looking at a new startup. We're looking at the end of the global economy as we know it.
It definitely has a certain gravity, and the language inside is incredibly ambitious. It's framed explicitly as a red pill moment for investors.
Right, the red pill investment. And the premise is just, it's absolutely wild. The document claims this company, MicroCosmic, isn't just an energy startup. It says they're a deep tech platform that has figured out how to, and I'm quoting this, unlock the basic code of the universe.
Which is a heavy claim.
Heavy. It's massive. They're talking about water as infinite fuel. They're talking about a NASDAQ listing in 3 years with a, what, $30 billion valuation?
Potentially.
And they're asking for seed money based on this idea that they can just rewrite the laws of physics.
So my question for you, and really the whole mission of this deep dive, is simple. Is this the next Google, or is this the most elaborate piece of financial science fiction ever written?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. And to answer it, we have to look past the buzzwords. We really need to strip down this microcosmic genesis proposal and look at the actual mechanics, both the physics and the financials.
Right.
Because the document, which was prepared by this strategic advisor who just goes by Gemini, it makes a very specific argument that we're shifting from an era of burning the past, fossil fuels, to programming the future.
Programming the future with water. Okay, let's start with the tech. Because as a cynical VC, and that's the hat I'm wearing today, I see water as fuel and my scan guard just starts beeping.
We've seen this before, right? Stanley Meyer's dune buggy, the cold fusion hype. They aren't claiming to, burn water like gasoline, are they?
No, and that's a really crucial distinction. The document is very clear. Microcosmic doesn't produce energy, it unlocks it.
Unlocks it.
Traditional hydrogen production, electrolysis, it's a brute force method. You take electricity, you smash it into water molecules, you force them apart. It takes a lot of energy to get any energy out.
Right. It's inefficient. You usually put more in than you get out, or it's close to break even at best.
Exactly. It's like trying to open a locked door by just running into it with your shoulder. But Microcosmic is pitching something they call quantum resonance electrolysis.
Okay, quantum resonance electrolysis. And this is where they bring in the Tesla code.
Correct.
Nikola Tesla. The man, not the car company.
The man himself. The whole proposal leans heavily on Tesla's 369 theory, the idea that these numbers represent some fundamental mathematical pattern of the universe.
Right.
And Microcosmic claims they've built a hardware interface that actually taps into this. They mention a specific piece of hardware called the Rodin coil.
I saw that diagram. It looks complex. It's got numbers all over it.
It's all about the geometry. The document specifies of a very, very unique winding path for the copper coil. 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5.
Okay, hold on. You're rattling off numbers 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. It sounds like the combination to my luggage lock. Why does winding a copper wire in that specific sequence matter? Why not just wrap it in a circle like a normal magnet?
So this is where we have to get a little weird.
Okay.
In standard physics, a coil creates a magnetic field that pushes out or pulls in, a straight line. But the Rodin coil, because of that specific number map, is designed to create a suction point.
A magnetic vacuum.
Think of it like water going down a bathtub drain. If you just push the water with your hand, it's chaotic, it takes a lot of effort.
Right.
But if you create a vortex, the water organizes itself and flows incredibly fast with almost no resistance. This coil allegedly creates a magnetic vortex.
So instead of smashing the water molecule with electricity,
which creates heat and waste.
right, it creates a magnetic field that just pulls the molecule apart at its seams.
That's the idea. Standard electrolysis is the sledgehammer.
And this is, what, a lockpick?
A lockpick is the perfect analogy. You aren't forcing the door, you're just tickling the tumblers until the door opens itself. That's the magic they are selling. They claim this creates a 0-point energy magnetic field.
Tickling the tumblers. Okay, that implies precision. Which brings us to the software side. I found this fascinating because usually energy is a hardware play.
Right.
But the pitch here is that MicroCosmic is actually a software company disguised as a hardware company. They talk about a PID resonance locking algorithm.
Exactly.
Okay, for anyone who didn't spend 4 years in engineering school, let's unpack PID. Proportional integral derivative, right? It's a control loop, like cruise control in your car.
That is the perfect analogy. Cruise control senses the speed, adjusts the gas. You go uphill, it gives more gas. You go downhill, it backs off. This algorithm does the same thing, but for the vibration of the water molecule.
And it uses specific frequencies to do that. I saw these in the document, 528 hertz and 963 hertz.
Yes.
I highlighted those. 528 hertz. Isn't that the love frequency in like new age circles?
Yeah.
This is where I start getting skeptical again.
It sounds woo-woo. I totally agree. But in this proposal, those aren't just random tones to meditate to. They're the control signals. Think of an opera singer shattering a wine glass.
Okay.
She has to hit the exact resonant frequency of the glass. If she's a little sharp or a little flat, nothing happens. But if she locks onto that frequency, the glass shatters with very little effort.
So the PID algorithm is the opera singer, and the water molecule is the wine glass.
Perfectly put. And they call this source code the Windows system of the energy world.
Right.
Just like Windows manages the hardware of your computer to run apps, this algorithm manages the resonant frequencies to release hydrogen on demand.
On demand. That's a key phrase we'll come back to. But I have to play the skeptic here. 528 hertz, vortex coils, 0-point energy. This sounds like alchemy. It sounds like magic.
It does, and the document anticipates that skepticism. But look at the promised output. If the physics holds, and that is a very big if,
A huge if.
the result is clean water and zero marginal cost energy. They really emphasize there are no expensive consumables, no lithium mining, no rare earth metals, just water. The document says every drop of water is a battery.
Yeah, it's a sexy slogan. I'll give them that. Every drop of water is a battery.
Yeah.
But slogans don't pay the bills. I flipped to section 2, the valuation, and I nearly choked on my coffee.
The numbers are ambitious.
Ambitious. They're delusional. They want a seed valuation of what, $300 to $500 million? For a company that right now is basically a PDF and a coil of wire.
Well, this is the thing.
Standard manufacturing multiples would put them at 50 million tops. Why do they think they deserve a 10x premium before they've even sold a single product?
Because they explicitly refuse to be valued as a manufacturing company. They cite the disruptive innovation model. They aren't selling the box. They're selling the code that runs the box.
The Tesla argument.
Exactly. Why is Tesla worth more than Ford? Ford sells cars. Tesla sells a data platform that just happens to have wheels. MicroCosmic is arguing that their algorithm, the software tuning, that vortex we talked about, is the Windows operating system for energy.
So they're saying, don't compare us to Ford or GE, compare us to Microsoft.
Or compare them to Plug Power or Bloom Energy, the traditional hydrogen giants. They're worth billions, but they have huge infrastructure costs. MicroCosmic claims to have 1/10 the cost and 5 times the efficiency.
So if that's true.
If that's true, the monopoly potential is real. If you own the operating system for water-based energy, then $500 million is actually cheap.
That's the visionary pitch. But as an investor, I'm buying a roadmap. I'm buying a promise that you can actually execute this. So let's walk through their roadmap to NASDAQ. They've got this broken down year by year.
It's a very tight timeline. 3 years to an IPO.
Let's start with year 1, 2026. This is the proof.
This is the make or break year. The goal is the M reactor alpha, a working prototype. But the key metric here isn't just that it makes bubbles, it's the efficiency. They need a coefficient of performance greater than 5.0.
Okay, let's just unpack COP greater than 5.0 for the listener.
Okay.
This is the holy grail metric. That means for every 1 unit of electricity I put in to run the machine, I get 5 units of energy out.
Precisely. In the world of thermodynamics, that is significant.
That's impossible is what it is.
Well, traditional electrolysis is usually below 1.0. You lose energy. If they can get a COP of 5.0 certified by a reputable body like UL or TUV, the $50 million Series A funding they want becomes a no-brainer.
Okay, so 2026 is building the magic box. Then comes 2027, the scale. They aren't going for consumer cars yet. Where are they targeting?
They're going where the pain is highest. Maritime logistics and offshore microgrids. Think about a container ship. It burns bunker fuel, the dirtiest, thickest sludge on the planet.
Right, the stuff that makes environmentalists cry.
Exactly. If you can take the seawater right under the hull, run it through the M reactor, and burn clean hydrogen, you solve one of the biggest pollution problems in the world.
And the business model shifts here too, right? They stop selling the boxes.
They pivot to ease energy as a service. They license the tech. They stop being a hardware vendor and become a utility provider. That's how they project hitting that unicorn status, a billion-dollar valuation by year 2.
Which sets the stage for year 3, 2028, 2029, the harvest. This is where it gets to you and me. The microcosmic home box.
The consumer product. Imagine a box on the side of your house. You hook up your garden hose, it splits the water, powers your home, charges your EV, and the only exhaust is clean water.
It sounds perfect, almost too perfect. And their goal here is the NASDAQ QIPO, target market cap, $10 to $30 billion. They call themselves the Google of energy.
Because they own the search algorithm for power. It's a compelling narrative. But narratives don't survive contact with reality without a fight. Which brings us to Section 4, risks.
Oh, there are risks. And we have to address the elephant in the room. Actually, it's not an elephant. It's a law of physics, thermodynamics. You cannot get more energy out than you put in. If I put 1 watt in and get 5 watts out, this COP of 5.0 they promise, that is a perpetual motion machine. That is scientifically illegal.
And the document knows that. They expect you to say that. This is where they play their semantic card, open system versus closed system.
Break that down, because if they are pitching perpetual motion, I'm walking out of the room.
A closed system is a sealed box. Nothing enters, nothing leaves. In that box, you can't create energy. A battery in a box will eventually run out.
Right.
But think of a sailboat. You don't row a sailboat, yet it moves with massive force. Why?
Because it's catching the wind. The wind is the external energy source.
It is the sailboat is an open system. It leverages an invisible force, the wind. MicroCosmic claims their device is a sailboat, not a battery. They argue that the quantum vacuum, the background energy of the universe, is the wind.
So they aren't creating energy, they're harvesting it.
That's the claim. They call it energy leverage. They argue that the vortex coil and the resonance act like the sail, catching this background energy field. Now, whether you believe the quantum wind actually exists, that's a different story.
Energy leverage, that's good marketing.
Yeah.
But even if the physics works, what about the other monster in the room? Big oil. If I'm a trillion-dollar oil company and some startup says water is free fuel, I'm not sending them a fruit basket.
No. You're sending a cease and desist, or worse.
I'm crushing them.
It's a classic David and Goliath scenario. The microcosmic strategy is basically, if you can't beat them, join them.
Well,
Licensing. They plan to offer the technology to the oil giants. They want to help them transition from being oil giants to hydrogen giants.
so the pitch is, hey, you already have the distribution, the tankers, the infrastructure. Let us give you the product for free.
Exactly. Turn your enemies into shareholders.
Smart. You don't disrupt the incumbent. You let the incumbent profit from the disruption. We provide the software. You provide the scale.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It turns a war into a partnership.
What about safety? Hydrogen is scary. People think of the Hindenburg.
That's the regulatory hurdle. Storing hydrogen is difficult and dangerous. High-pressure tanks are basically bombs waiting to happen. But remember that phrase, on demand?
Right, the just-in-time manufacturing of gas.
Exactly. MicroCosmic's solution is that they never store the hydrogen. The home box, or the ship reactor, produces the gas the exact second it's needed to be burned.
So no storage tanks, no high-pressure vessels.
None. If you turn the machine off, the gas stops. It bypasses almost all the current safety regulations for hydrogen storage because there is no storage.
It's a regulatory hack.
It's a brilliant regulatory hack. It changes the entire insurance model.
Okay, so let's step back. We've looked at the Tesla geometry, the billion-dollar roadmap, the plan to co-opt big oil. The document wraps up with what they call the investment conclusion. And they go right back to that matrix metaphor, the red pill.
It's a powerful closing argument. Gemini, the advisor, puts it starkly. You can keep investing in the blue pill economy, burning dead dinosaurs, fighting over resources, polluting the air, or you take the red pill.
Which is investing in geometric truth and cosmic frequency. It sounds almost religious.
It is almost religious in its fervor. They aren't just selling a return on investment, they're selling a ticket to the future. It's a choice between stagnation and evolution.
It's terrifyingly huge if it's real. That's where I get stuck. If this is real, money becomes weird.
Yeah.
If energy costs zero, the cost of everything else plummets. Food, transportation, clean water, it all becomes cheap. The economy as we know it just collapses and rebuilds.
That's the disruptive innovation model taken to its logical extreme. If the physics holds up, if that Rodin coil and that 528 hertz frequency actually do what they claim, then the risk of investing becomes almost irrelevant.
How so?
Because if it works, it's the only investment that matters. It would render almost every other asset class obsolete.
And if it doesn't work?
then it's a very expensive lesson in fringe physics. But that's the nature of deep tech, right? You're not betting on a sure thing. You're betting on a possibility.
So to the listener tuning in, imagine you're sitting across the table for Gemini. The document is there. The pen is in your hand. You see the roadmap. M-Reactor Alpha in 2026. Unicorn status in 2027. NASDAQ in 2029. Do you sign? Are you a believer in the 369 code, or is this just well-written financial science fiction?
It forces you to ask what you really believe about the world. Is everything already discovered, or is there still some magic left in the math?
I think I'm going to be thinking about that 1 2 4 8 7 5 pattern all week.
Just don't try to wire your toaster with it. You might create a black hole in your kitchen.
No promises. But here's a final thought to leave you with, something that wasn't explicitly in the text but kept nagging at me. If MicroCosmic succeeds, and energy becomes as cheap and available as tap water, what happens to the global economy? I don't mean stock prices. I mean, what do people do? When the cost of living drops to near zero because the cost of energy is near zero, how does society organize itself? That's the real red pill.
That's a world we haven't even built a model for yet.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Observe, connect.